Hello everyone, 50 mistakes every chess player should know. And now we started with probably the most important chapter in this book, talking about the calculation, and error number 9, talking about failing to see unnatural candidate moves. First of all, what is the candidate moves? Before you select your move or before you play your move, it's better and usually advised to look at many moves before you decide to start calculating, to go in depth with a selected move. Yeah, so I selected 2, 3, 4 moves first, and then I will prioritize what to calculate first, and then we'll see how it works from there. So there is what's so called unnatural moves and unnatural candidate moves. And here is a list. I will try to put it on my right, always along the video, so you will have a better chance remembering them. First of all, a second sacrifice of material. What is a second sacrifice of a material? When you sacrifice in a position, we will see an example. When you sacrifice in a position the first time, and then the solution will be sacrificing again in the same position, yeah? In 1 move, in 2 moves, in 3 moves. If you sacrifice the queen, this is sometimes we fail to see, sacrificing material with check, not recapturing, which is very important because we tend to recapture normally very quickly. A backward queen move, backward knight move, in between move, what's so called Zwischenzug, intermediate moves. A move that damages or damage the protection of the king or damages the pawn structure, and sometimes a quiet move that does nothing in a very complicated position. So this is a list. I don't want it to make it as a memorization session, but let's see examples. Here we go. Playing white is almost 2100, playing black is 1800, and it's white to play. And in this position, this bishop is under fire, but I cannot take it actually because my rook will be taken. And if I take his rook, then he will take bishop takes c7 and things looks normal, yeah? But here, white fails to see the unnatural candidate move, which is retreating to the first rank, or normally retreating. This is something we fail to see in our candidate moves. Here in this position, white went on to play rook c to d1, and after rook c to d1, like, okay, I'm protecting the rook, and if you take rook takes d7, I'll take back, and I'm threatening the 2 bishops. But white fails to see that black has this strong idea, bishop c8. Now, the rook is under fire, so you cannot take this bishop. You cannot attack my knight this way or that way, because the bishop controls this diagonal, and the rook has to move back somewhere, and then I'll move my bishop back, and normally the position is kind of okay for white or for black. Probably white is slightly better, but not much. So rook c d1 is not the move. So what's the move? The move is retreating. Rook d to d1. Wow, what a move. By the way, it's not completely winning, but sometimes it is, because you fail to even select or see this move because it's unnatural. But after this book and after this probably video, you will have better way to look at the position. So after rook d to d1, knight a5 now is the only move to save black, attacking the bishop. But then we could win a pawn after bishop takes c6, f takes c6, h takes g3, and now we have a realistic advantage and realistic winning chances. It's not only slightly better, it's clearly better. Why? Because we succeed to see a retreating move. Yeah, this is very, very, very important when you select your natural or your candidate moves. It's a natural one. Another example is about not recapturing directly. Actually, this is maybe not realistic for blitz or bullet chess, but maybe within time you will start noticing that more and more. Here in this position, white has 2 captures, 1 and 2, and many of us will just select one of them. We will calculate to the best of our ability, and then we'll select one of them. By the way, this is a mistake because there is knight e3, and then there will be a fork. So it's not a great move. And here in this position, if you count pieces, white is a piece down. So, after the fork, you will be an exchange down. So if you take h takes g4, it's not a great move again, because after h takes g4, black has a very nice idea, which is bishop takes g4. And now if you go to play rook d5, hoping that after bishop takes e2, there is knight takes e2, and you're forking these two pieces, and you might be a piece up here in this position. But that will not happen because black has this great move, bishop to b4, and this is actually a very strong move. And this sign means it's clearly better for black. The point is, if you take my bishop, I will take with the knight, so my knight will be safe. And if you take my knight, I will take your knight, attacking the rook and attacking the bishop. So if you take my bishop, then I'll take your bishop will not be protected anymore, and here black is a pawn up. Maybe some compensation because of dark squares, but not much. So what's the idea, and what white failed to see? What's the unnatural move? The unnatural move is based on the concept of not recapturing. Do not recapture automatically. Here, in this position, rook d5 is the strongest move. And normally, think about it in this way. When you have one or more piece you can capture, think about threatening one more piece. If that does not work, if you did not win material, then what will happen? You will cause more problems to your opponent. He needs to think more, he needs to save or to waste more energy, and you widen the margin of error for your opponent, yeah? So after rook d5, now I'm threatening the bishop, I'm threatening the knight, and after e takes f5, you don't have the fork because rook takes e5 is there. For example, if you retreat your bishop somewhere, like bishop b4, I can take, as knight e3 now is not a threat, because I can take the knight, and when you take here, then I have two pieces for a rook, which is probably much better for white. So this is the idea, and this is the unnatural move, because you do have two clear options, yeah? One more example. Now in this position, again it's about retreating, but this time is the knight. Here, there's a problem that white is kind of facing. The problem along this diagonal, problem along this file, maybe the bishop, if the bishop moves, then the rook needs to be protected, and the rook is protected now. But I wanted to take this pawn. If I took this pawn, then the rook will be not protected. Maybe my opponent will make use of that pen. White calculated, and he thought, okay, I can take. But it's actually a bad move. Why it's a bad move? Because black here has this knight retreating idea, started by knight to g5, and then knight to e6, and now black is completely winning. Oof! Because now after knight g5, I have two threats. Bishop e5 directly, as you cannot take, you'll lose your rook. For example, whatever, like a3, bishop e5 check. And after you take, you lose your rook. This is a threat. And another threat, actually, after knight g5, is rook takes e7 first. So if you play bishop b3, so now my bishop e5 is no longer a threat. There is rook takes e7 directly, and then bishop e5 check, and you lose your rook. Okay, so what's going on after knight g5? You can do actually nothing. If you go, for example, f4, which is probably the only move to play against bishop e5 idea, then knight e6, a knight retreat. Now this guy is attacked, cannot move. You lose your rook. Only move to take. I will take back, but bad news. You cannot save your bishop. Now I simply have this idea, which is bishop f6, bishop to d8, and then your rook will be lost. If you tried something like rook c5, hoping for bishop d6 or bishop b6, then simply bishop d4. The rook will be attacked, and after that, bishop a7, bishop b8 is winning, or maybe you can capture a pawn and then come back to the same idea, and again, black is winning, because he failed to see a retreating idea. In the game, did black see that? No. He played rook takes e7. Though he's 2100, but he's not trained in a way to see unnatural candidate moves. Because this needs, first of all, awareness of that concept existed, yeah? So he played rook c7, and after rook c7, bishop e5 check, and this is actually enough, kind of enough for a draw. Yeah, there is a passed pawn most likely on the queen side, but as the opposite colored bishops existed, so it should be a draw. One more example about what's so-called the second sacrifice. Here in this position, white played bishop h6, which is actually a very good move. And the point is, if you take, you will be checkmated after queen takes h6, queen g7 is there. If you tried some sort of knight f5, probably knight f6 is enough. Now only move is king h8 and then queen takes h7, checkmate. So it seems to be a very strong move. And actually, if you play g6, maybe knight f6 is enough to win an exchange and or a piece, and you'll win the game, yeah? But actually, it's not winning because black has a reply to that and white sees this. What was more forcing was this move, knight takes g7, and most likely because white is 2100, he calculated that. And after king takes, bishop check. Now if king h8, then simply check and checkmate. It's very easy and very clear. So what white failed to see after king g8 is what's so-called the second sacrifice. Here in this position, white thought, okay, but now if I go queen g5, then there's knight g6 and nothing I can do. Maybe there is something like queen f6 I need to calculate, but it's not super clear. My opponent can take the rook and maybe at least sacrificing the queen. So I'm not really convinced. Like for example, queen f6, rook takes, king h2, queen f8. Maybe it works maybe it's better for black even, because 3 pieces is normally better than a queen. But what he failed to see is that after knight takes g7, king g7, bishop h6, king h8 is the second sacrifice, which is rook takes e7, and after that it's just resignable. Because if you take, there's queen g5 check followed by queen g7 checkmate, and nothing there can be done. Wow. So this is, guys, a great concept. Guys, if you like and if you find this series useful, please hit the like button and subscribe. So we continue, yeah? After bishop h6, knight d5 was a move, but there is queen takes d5, and after queen takes d5, rook e7. Actually, I want to continue this game for a reason. Now, after queen takes h6, it's clear that the attack is just finished, and black is a pawn up, yeah? So here, it's better to readjust and play for the draw, because you no longer have an attacking opportunities, and it's better to take the queen, even though white is much higher rated player, but he should play according to the position and be kind of objective, because the winning chances now is it's not actually reduced, it's just finished. As queen takes b4 is just lost because he wanted to win this position, and this position is not winnable because my king is kind of safer than your king, my rook is kind of very active, and my queen is very active as well, and I am a pawn up. So here queen c1 check, and after king h2, queen c6, and the rook is just vanished or about to. So it's better after queen takes b4, instead of queen b4, to go to the rook endings, and this is actually easier to defend, like after rook b2, rook d6, and should be a draw because of the damage of the pawn structure, or at least the best chance to fight. And now, again, it's about not recapturing directly. Now in this position, black, last move for white probably was bc or dc, and black automatically, most of us will do that the same, played knight takes c5. Automatically, like, okay, why not to capture the pawn? What's the point? What's wrong with you, huh? So after knight takes c5, why the position is a draw, and it ended in a draw most likely. What was strong is to play queen c6 first. Again, as we said, first of all, or first step to be aware of unnatural candidate moves is to be aware of that concept is existed. You need to look to widen your vision, yeah, when you're selecting a move. Queen c6 attacking the knight first, most likely, because if the knight retreat, then our knight will be very strong on e4, yeah, because we're attacking the queen now. So most likely queen c2, but now, after knight takes c5, queen takes c5 check, for example, king g2. Now, black has many moves to probably fight for the advantage, most likely d4. d4 is a very strong move. Now we cannot take, as your queen is there, and maybe ideas like rook e3 is coming, maybe queen d5 somewhere. Black is completely not winning, but completely in the driving seat, yeah? So let's go back. While in the game, when you take here, I take back, you take. The queen is around, yeah? Even queen d4 is enough to play a safe game of chess. King f3, by the way, played in the game, but queen d4 is safe enough because the queen is there. So the idea of not recapturing directly causes the white queen to move or to step away of the king. So the defense or defensive mission will be very, very tough after such simple silent move. Now while I preparing for this video, I remembered something. Actually, now we're done with error number 9 in the book. But I remembered the game because in the list, and probably you will see it in your right, we mentioned something about the pawn structure. And when I thought, or when I remember that, I remember the game played by 𝒏𝒔𝒂𝒌𝒆💃 and Anand. And Anand all of a sudden played a very crazy chess move, destroying his pawn structure, and was a brilliant move. Let's see that. It's a classical Sicilian actually, and 𝒏𝒔𝒂𝒃 went on to castling long, h6, bishop e3, taking, f3. I just wanted to reach that position very fast. Bishop e7, g4, rook b8, knight d5, queen d2, knight f6, and here we go. Here in this position, black could easily play bishop takes f6, the most natural move in the position. And after that, rook takes d2, the pawn is attacked, either bishop e7 or king e7, followed by rook d8. Black is completely safe. And no problem at all. What Anand played was g takes f6. What? The point of g takes f6 is very deep. After rook d2, see the point. I will go h5. My point is to go h5 and then exchange this pawn with this. Okay, first of all, I will exchange my h pawn with your f pawn, as you will see in the game, like rook g1, h takes, f takes, and then d5. Say black is doing nothing. Like this is my idea, yeah. This is in terms of pawn structure, yeah. In terms of pawn structure, this is my idea. f5, and then creating two passers, thanks to the doubled f pawn. This is the creative genius idea by Anand, and actually it happened. After g4, bishop c4 first. Why bishop c4? Because I wanted the square for the king, and this is again a natural move. b3 played, bishop takes, rook takes, rook h3, attacking the bishop, rook e2 protecting, the king came, g5. I mean, if you did not do g5, it's going to be the same. Because again, king e6, d5, you take, I back, I go f5, or preparing for f5, you take, I take, probably most likely with a piece, I will put my rook somewhere, and then I'll have a two connected passers. And actually that's what happened in the game. And now instead of taking or something, no, king e6, you take, I take back. And now after bishop d2, bishop e7, the same idea. First of all f6, and then d5. And now he taking back, and now two connected pass pawns. But Anand did not fail to see the unnatural move, because sometimes to pass a certain level, you need to start thinking about unnatural candidate moves. And now, after king takes d5, rook f5, the king stepped back, and sooner two pawns will start actually marching, and slowly the game, I mean, Anand did not base his strategy on these two pawns, but he tried to make use of them. And after bishop e5, some mating ideas, because in the endgame there was so-called the two weakness principle, so he applied that, and he won an exchange, and later on win the game after rook d2, attacking the bishop and attacking on c2. So sometimes g takes f3 or g takes f6 is the right move and is the winning idea. This is actually all about this video, guys. Don't forget, this is the 9th episode of this series. You can find it all on your left. And if you are interested to complete this 50 mistake that you should or maybe you must know, then hit the subscribe button, and see you very soon.